What movie traumatized you when you were a child? Story 1. 90 of Brave Little Toaster. Almost every time the characters turned around, someone almost died. Lampy getting electrocuted, Blanky almost getting stolen by mice. The Flower. Blanky telling Toaster, "I'm not scared," before his head goes under a deep mud puddle. That song Worthless, and the kid almost getting crushed by the trash compactor thing. This movie scared the absolute piss out of me as a kid. Also, shout out to the opening of Twister. Had nightmares of being sucked into the sky by a tornado and thought that was the whole movie for years. Story 2. Who Framed Roger Rabbit? That poor little shoe got put into the acid and the villain getting back up after being run over with a road roller. Those scenes were in my nightmares for a while. Story 3. Willy Wonka, the Chocolate Factory. Those darn Oompa Loompas just came out, sang a creepy song, then rolled the children away, never to be seen again. Story 4. The Fly. I was 8 and my dad let me watch it. It absolutely traumatized me, and now I am 33 and I still fudge dislike flies. Story 5. The Black Cauldron sent me into an existential dread spiral that left me debilitating, afraid of my own mortality for years. Story 6. Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, that fudge child napper scared the crap out of me. Dislike every second of it. Answer. Saw that at the drive-in on a double bill with Yellow Submarine, and while the child catcher creeped me out, it was Yellow Submarine that really freaked me out. Darn apple, bonkers, and glove. P.S. Chitty Chitty Bang Bang was big enough at the time that Simplicity had a couple of girls' patterns as tie-ins, and since my mom made most of my clothes at that point, she got one of them for me. I really wanted to wear one of the dresses to the drive-in, but my parents decided it was too casual an occasion, not to mention too messy. We always brought Ritz crackers sandwiched with peanut butter as snacks. So no such luck, darn it. Hell, I'm turning 64 tomorrow, and I still want that pinafore to go over a dress. Story 7. The Never-Ending Story. To this day, I see Artax, the horse's eyes as it sunk. Amazing movie. But will make me cry to this day. Story 8. I don't know if this count, but Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. The scene with the torture bugs that they put in people's ears? Yeah, teenage me left the theater. But I don't know if it counts because the real trauma happened years before that, and the movie just made me relive it. Story 9. The Shining. The Woman in the Bathtub. It's my mom's favorite movie, so I ended up watching it with her way too young. Story 10. My mom was watching The Green Mile one night as I went to bed. I peeked my head out the door, just as time to see the guy get his head fried in the electric chair. I had that vision in my head for years and to this day haven't seen the movie. Story 11. Hook. My parents rented it for me when I was 3 or 4 and big into Peter Pan, but my takeaway from that movie was that Captain Hook could come into my bedroom and kidnap me anytime. I spent a few nights afraid to sleep, and then one day marched up to my parents and announced, if Captain Hook does come, I'll just beat him up with my muscles. Story 12. Jurassic Park. I saw that movie too young in the 90s and made me absolutely terrified of dinosaurs, which were all the rage in the 90s, so there was no escaping it. Story 13. My dad had on the movie Outbreak, 1995, for only like a few minutes. See that guy dying on screen while his girlfriend is screaming is etched into my brain. Story 14. When I was 5, my grandfather let us, his 4 grandchildren, watch Hitchcock's The Birds whilst babysitting. Fudge birds. I dislike them. Story 15. The Original War of the Worlds. When that thing unscrewed to this day, when I see something divided into thirds, the Mercedes logo, a paper plate, whatever, I think of those Martians. Story 16. Carrie. I watched it when I was like 8 and the prom scene was the scariest thing ever. The big eyes and the blood on her. Story 17. Saw Chucky at FAR too young. I definitely thought all my dolls wanted to eliminate me for a few years after. Story 18. Arachnophobia literally gave me arachnophobia, which is now one of the major issues in my life still to this day. Story 19. Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds. I was about 9 and went to the theater with my big sister who was 13. I don't know what our parents were thinking. During the movie, I chewed completely through my little vinyl purse strap, and my sister worked a tiny hole in her cotton sweater into a hole she could put her fist through. We slept in the same twin bed for like a month afterwards. Story 20. Saw. Parents were out of town and my older brother had rented the movie with a few of his friends. He said I could stay up late if I watched the movie with them. Couldn't get the pig mask out of my head for quite a while. Story 21. The Goonies. Sloth scared the shoot out of me. My parents played a sick prank and bought a mug with his face on it and used to hide it in the cabinets and stuff. The part where Chunk throws the candy bar and Sloth flips out traumatized me forever. Story 22. My preschool put on a movie about a boy who had a monster in his closet. It might have been There Is a Nightmare in My Closet, in which case it's not really a full movie. The monster turned out to be friendly, but the problem was that this was the first time I had ever heard of the concept of monsters in closets. So instead of taking home a lesson about confronting my fears and not judging on appearances, I went home knowing that there could monsters in my closet, and I might not have the nice ones. Spent some time running past my closet door and hiding under the covers every night after that. Story 23. Wizard of Oz when I was 4 or 5. My sister said her creepy boyfriend knew the flying monkeys and I was scared shitless. Story 24. The Blob. Saw it on Dialing for Dollars, and I couldn't sleep with my bedroom door closed for years after that. And the Blob was going to come creeping under the door. I had a plan for how I could jump on top of the dresser, then grab the top of the door and swing through it right over the top of that darn blob though. Story 25. If by child you mean 16, then The Grudge. It's been 20 years and I'm a grown jerk adult, and that movie still dictates some decisions that I make. Story 26. Monty Python and THR meaning of life. Specifically, the organ donation scene, where people show up to collect the kidney liver while the person is still alive, and then hack them open to take it. I was about 5 when I saw it, and didn't know what movie it was until I was early 20s, and a friend wanted to show me this super awesome movie. The memories came rushing back when it got to that scene. Story 27. Poltergeist. I couldn't stand the static on the TV, and I believe is due that movie. The end of broadcasting day would scare the shoot out of me. It made me anxious at the level I couldn't get up to turn off the TV LOL. I'd just cover my face with my blankets and wait for my TV to turn off by itself after some minutes with that static. Story 28. The first Men in Black movie in 1997. I was 5 back then. I disliked cockroaches because of that movie. Story 29. Spirited Away. It played on Cartoon Network when I was around 7 maybe. It wasn't necessarily the monsters as much as it was the scene where the main character's parents transform into pigs, watching them stuff their faces while slowly morphing into such gluttonous beasts with no indication of them returning to their human form, triggered something deep within me that has left me right since. Story 30. Tremors. Don't know why, but that first scene of the worm coming out of the ground had me scream crying. Story 31. Jurassic Park. Mom was like, don't show it to our 4 and 5-year-old children. And Dad was like, I'm gonna show it to them. And then I had dinosaur nightmares until my 20s. One of my all-time favorite movies though. Story 32. The peanut butter solution was a nightmare that I still haven't fully recovered from. We watched it in elementary school shortly after its release. I must have been in 1st or 2nd grade at the time, and I can only assume it was considered a harmless Canadian children's movie at the time. Story 33. The Fly. I had severe emetophobia as a child. I was probably 9 to 10 when I saw it. And when he puked on the donut, I literally had so much anxiety and nightmares for a week that sometimes I would get out of bed at night crying for my mother and thinking I was going to throw up too. Now I watch it and it looks so fake and goofy, and I'm no longer emetophobic that I just laugh at it. Story 34. Faces of Passing. My parents watched with me in the room. I was 3. Still have nightmares from time to time. Story 35. One of the Wallace and Gromit movies. I don't remember which one. One particular scene with a chicken wearing a latex glove on its head, it terrified me for reasons I still don't understand. Story 36. A bit obscure, but Little Nemo. Adventures in Slumberland, 1989. There's a scene where the nightmare, a blob-like entity, envelops the cheerful king of Slumberland while he's merrily dancing at a ball. I asked my parents to turn off the movie right then, and never finished it until decades later. Story 37. There might be more I could be repressing LOL, but off the top of my head, Aliens. I forget which movie in particular it was, so I kinda just avoided the whole series. Mars Attacks. I sometimes feel bad because I hear this was supposed to be a comedy, but I was quite young, and I remember a scene where there was a scared couple, and the one person is like, "Take my hand," and so they're holding hands or whatever, and then after a moment they look back, and the camera pans to show that the person was vaporized, and all that is left is the hand that the other person was holding. RoboCop 2. I'm sure that only saying the title one can say, yeah, I can see that, but the scene that particularly traumatized me was actually where the villain is in the hospital or whatever, and the doctors are drawing on his head with marker because they were gonna extract his brain to put it in a robot or whatever. Everything about that fudged me up as a kid. I had nightmares about the brain in a jar, and I think some that involved that scenario happening to me. Fun. I think that contributes to why I never liked doctors growing up. Starship Troopers. I remember kinda not liking the movie to begin with, but I got really upset when the protagonist's girlfriend got impaled from behind by one of the bugs while on the way back to the ship or something. This definitely caused some issues for me, and why I initially refused a game I got for Christmas or so later on, Jet Force Gemini, since it involved alien bugs as the bad guys. It may still have had an effect on me nowadays, as it might be part of why I'm not a big fan of Helldivers 2 despite its overall praise. Also, it isn't necessarily a single movie, but I was really freaked out by any kind of inside-the-body human anatomy type documentaries. Like, really freaked out. I don't really know why. Story 38. Pet Cemetery. The scene with the girl with spinal meningitis had me clinging to my sheets at night for weeks. Story 39. I've answered a similar thing before, so I just copied my previous comment. When I was around 8-ish or so, my dad had visitation rights that he only utilized to piss off my mom. It didn't matter that I didn't want to go. If my mom tried to not make me go, he'd call the cops and they'd make her take me. He didn't care about spending time with me. Anyways, that's the backstory to this. Halloween. When it'd be at his house, he'd set me on the couch, put on the Halloween movies, and go do whatever. Those movies were my babysitter. So to this day, I cannot watch any of them. I am terrified of them at 33 years old. Good news? They just sent my dad to a nursing home, and a terrible one at that. And he wants me to visit or help? May. Oh. Go watch Halloween, Dad. Story 40. I can't for the life of me remember what movie this was, but I want to say King Kong? There's a scene where a bunch of men are scrambling on a steep cliff face and hear rumbling. Turns out it's a stampede of sauropods, and the men have to try and outrun giant animals on this narrow mountain ridge. The following scene is a horrific display of petrified helplessness, as these grown adults feebly try to dodge supermassive animals and fail. Something about watching people fight for survival, fully aware there is nothing they can do to prevent their own passing, and that their inevitable passing will, be terrifying and likely painful too, really fudge bothered me. My stomach hurt thinking about how scared I would be on a cliff like that, with hundreds of building-sized animals were panicking on a cliff. Just spending minutes wheezing against the whirling dust clouds, dodging giant feet and flinging tails, knowing that no matter how well you play the game, you're going to die, and yet you still frantically try because you're too scared to die. This is also why I have an issue when watching the car bomb scene in Law-Abiding Citizen and a particular episode of Breaking Bad. Crawl space. Both hit that same button that I think was programmed by this dinosaur scene. Story 41. The Boy in the Striped Pajamas. I was in 3rd or 4th grade. That's how I learned about the Holocaust, and it gave me horrible anxiety for weeks. I struggled to read about it and learn about it in school without getting nauseous all the way up to high school. I still can't face it and watch it again. Story 42. The Wrath of Khan. I had to sleep with blankets around my head for months because I was so scared of bugs crawling in my ears. Story 43. Little Nemo. Adventures in Slumberland. The nightmare behind the locked door scared me for a long time when I was little. Story 44. E.T. I'm good with it now, but back then it scared the shootout off me. The beginning shed scene and the whole government plastic tunnel scene, plus him dying. I couldn't fully watch it until my teens. Story 45. Nightmare on Elm Street. I had nightmares of Krueger trying to eliminate me into my 30s. I just accepted the fact that I would deal with these for the rest of my life. It wasn't until a few years ago when I actually watched it as an adult that I realized it was as much a comedy as it was a horror movie. I kind of feel stupid for being that terrified of him for so long. Story 46. Aliens and Communion. Aliens came out on TV in the mid-late 80s, a few years after theater, and my 8-year-old brain couldn't cope. And then I saw Communion and the thought of one of those gray alien faces peering out from an ajar door. No! Story 47. The Opening of Prince of Egypt. One of the first movies I watched on a big flat-screen TV, we always had a smaller box TV at home. DreamWorld animators instilled a lifelong fear of alligators and crocodiles in poor 5-year-old me. Story 48. The Brave Little Toaster. Apart from having some scary scenes, I think this movie created a generation of hoarders. I know I still have some trouble throwing things away, and I trace it back to this movie making every object seem alive and the landfill a horrible place where they will be tortured. Story 49. When I was 9, I asked my mom if I could watch Temple of Doom, but she thought it was Raiders of the Lost Ark, and she spoiled the end for me and told me it might scare me. So, I popped in Temple of Doom and was absolutely traumatized by it. I told her it was nothing like she had described, and she was like, "Oh, no." Story 50. The Frighteners. It was a movie with Michael J. Fox who could see dead people or people with unfinished business, but it scared the shoot out of me and was the only movie I remember staying up all night freaked out over. Story 51. Mars Needs Moms. I thought that aliens would be looking into my window and trying to find a way to steal my mom. Created a lifelong fear of having window shades up at night. Story 52. Trilogy of Terror. That little freaking doll chasing her around. I seen that when I was 6. 50 years later, I still am creeped out. Great parenting, eh? Story 53. The Adventures of Elmo in Grouchlandy was like 5, and there was a showing of it at our local theater. I was so scared of the evil man who had Elmo's blanket that I started crying during the movie, and we had to leave. Story 54. My parents weren't the sharpest tools in the shed and let me go to the theater alone to see the original Amityville Horror when I was 12. They paid for that bad decision for years. Story 55. Scary Movie 4. Ridiculous, I know. It was that boy that was meant to be a satire of The Grudge. horrifying. Story 56. The 1974 movie It's Alive about evil demon babies that eliminate people. I think it turned me gay. Story 57. Don't laugh. Laurel and Hardy TV episode. The final scene showed them with their heads turned completely backwards. I couldn't stop sobbing. Oh, I was about 3 or 4. Story 58. Fire in the Sky, 90s, and Hellraiser, 80s. Good God, I even tried to watch them again as a seasoned adult and instantly was re-traumatized. Story 59. I don't know what movie show it was, but there was a scene where a talking banana was begging a woman not to eat it, and eventually she gives in to hunger and eats the banana. Still to this day, I have no clue what movie show this was, but talking food movies will forever gross me out. I refuse to watch Sausage Party. Story 60. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Monkey brains. Baby snakes. Then there's ripping a man's heart out whilst he's still alive. Story 61. Howard the Duck. I couldn't tell you one bit of that storyline, but there's a scene where some alien thing comes out of someone's mouth, and I noped the hell out of that movie. I was maybe 5 when I watched it. Story 62. Child's Play. 1-3. The Day After Tomorrow. The Hills Have Eyes. Saw. Jeepers Creepers. Why did I have access to so many horror movies as a child? Story 63. Poltergeist. Some darn fool caretaker thought it'd be great to shock us into believing in the supernatural at the Catholic daycare I attended. Story 64. E.T. When they have them in the tent thing for medical tests, or something like that, dislike it enough to never watch again. Story 65. Seeing a VHS tape that said the Movie Breakfast Club and my parents had videotaped over it, doing adult content in their bedroom. Story 66. Scream scared the hell out of me, and I wouldn't admit it, because I was 13 and too old to be scared by a movie. But to be honest, I haven't watched any Scream movies since. Story 67. Total Recall. I was around 5 years old and got up after midnight because I couldn't sleep. I only saw the scene where Douglas Quaid, Arnold's character, has a nightmare that he takes a trip to Mars and has his space helmet break, exposing his head to the low-gravity environment and causing it to implode. That image stuck with me for some time. Story 68. Invasion of the Body Snatchers. The last scene in the movie, where even one of the main characters, whose name I can't remember, got assimilated, and the horrible shriek when he saw the only other survivor, who was his friend. Fudge dude that messed me up. Answer. That's the big one for me. The 1970s version of Invasion of the Body Snatchers pulled my sci-fi loving little kid self in with a cool opening shot of life out in space, which then became this nightmare of a threat we might have dealt with, except nobody could be bothered to take it seriously. Then that final set of scenes with Sutherland. Actual nightmare fuel, similar energy to both versions of On the Beach, which also has a hopelessness I found nightmarish. Story 69. Child's Play. I dislike that Fudge doll, and I Fudge dislike that he's back en vogue. Chucky needs to be expelled from the human psyche. Story 70. The Fox and the Hound was the most traumatic. The Lion King. The Never-Ending Story. Horse. Honestly, they're all too intense for children. What were adults thinking? I watched them on VHS, sitting on the carpet in front of the TV, bawling my eyes out. And the first Harry Potter movie, I was 8 or 9, and they took the whole school to the movie theater, so seeing Voldemort, Snape, which I thought was intimidating and scary, and all the darkness on a big screen, ruined fantasy for me for the next 15 to 20 years. Story 71. Arachnophobia. I watched it when I was 5-yo, M39-yo now. My little brother was obsessed with bugs and he loved it. I was traumatized for life. I still check my slippers for lethal spiders every single time before I put them on. Story 72. Final Destination 3. I was out my cousin's house because they had a giant party. I was like 6 and saw the tanning bed scene. Story 73. Dawn of the Dead, Zack Snyder version. I was legit convinced that a zombie apocalypse would happen any day for a month straight as a kid, and my parents were too dumb to realize made it even scarier. It was also my first real introduction to zombies as a kid, so I was freaked TF out. Till this day, that movie gives me butterflies, but I love zombies now. Story 74. Halloween. Been scared of looking out my window at night to see someone looking back at me ever since. Story 75. I saw the black hole in a theater when I was 5 or 6. That scene where the robot drills through the guy's chest freaked me right out, and it was a Disney movie. Story 76. Seymour the Safety Seal. A children's video with different songs promoting safe practices. Don't Talk to Strangers messed me up PP to this day. In my 30s. Story 77. Moonraker and the Spy Who Loved Me. I was scared of Jaws, or as I referred to him as Bullet Teeth. I used to hide in the hallway when he was on screen. Story 78. The Elephant Man. I saw it when I was about 7, and it traumatized me for years. I've never watched it since, and I'm 50 now. Story 79. Chucky. My brothers convinced me Chucky was real and he lived in my closet. I slept on my dad's floor for 6 months. Story 80. Horror movie called Black Sunday, I believe. They decided a young woman was a witch and they hammered a metal mask onto her face. Thing is, I was babysitting for family and made a very poor decision regarding entertainment. I had to call my father, who was on a date with my mother, to come and reassure everyone that it was just a movie. And there was zero chance of any of us having metal masks hammered onto our screaming faces. Story 81. I'm 41, and the last time I slept with my parents was when I watched the 2-part made-for-TV movie IT. Tim Curry scared the shoot out of me. Also the last scene in Candyman when he said Helen. In the mirror, I couldn't get her face out of my head. Story 82. The Witches was probably the first one. I'm still not overly fond of Angelica Houston. Event Horizon was also pretty traumatizing as a 12-year-old. Story 83. The IT miniseries. My cousin showed it to me when I was far too young to watch it, and I ran screaming from the room when Pennywise attacks Georgie. Stuck with me for a long time after that. Finally managed to get through it as a teenager. Story 84. The Willy Wonka with Gene Wilder from the 70s. The nonchalant manner in the way the Oompa Loompas dealt with the kids dying, nobody explained to me, terrified me. Story 85. Tremors. I used to have nightmares about stepping outside, making too much noise, and the graboids coming to get me. Love the movie though, and will stop and watch it anytime I see it on TV LOL. Story 86. Pink Floyd's The Wall. Specifically the school kids falling into a meat grinder while wearing masks scene. Story 87. There is this kind of bad movie starring James Earl Jones and Estelle Parsons from 1975 called The UFO Incident. It is a true story about a couple, Betty and Barney Hill, who encounter aliens in 1961. There is this one part where Betty is being hypnotized to recollect her abduction. She is recollecting these aliens coming up to the car on a dark country road. Betty starts freaking out as she recounts the incident. The way the actress Estelle Parsons freaked out really freaked me the fudge out, and I sometimes think about it and get goosebumps. It comes just after a scene where James Earl Jones is hypnotized and is crying, and the combination of seeing James Earl Jones crying and then Estelle Parsons freaking out really tweaked me out. Edit YouTube has the full movie. Here is a link to the start of the hypnotism scene starting with James Earl Jones freaking out. Story 88. Event Horizon. I watched it back as an adult, and it's fairly unremarkable dark sci-fi. But man, did it have an impact on me as an unprepared boy. Story 89. Ratatouille. I was so scared of the old lady in the gas mask that I had to skip the entire beginning for years. Story 90. Strangely, Hocus Pocus, I love it now, but really scare me as kid. I wasn't really exposed to horror films like I Am Out Now or Life. Now, not scared of anything, least I don't admit to be scared to anyone, not even myself. Story 91. The Last of the Mohicans. I was probably 7 or 8. The scene where they burned people alive at the stake traumatized me. Also, the movie Alive. I remember having nightmares about surviving a plane crash and people having to eat the dead to survive. I have no idea why my parents allowed me to watch either one of these movies when I was so young. Story 92. Scary Movie 3 of all things. I must have been around 8 years old when I saw it, and the parody version of The Ring was still way too scary for me. I didn't watch TV for multiple weeks after that, and I had nightmares about it. Later in life as a teenager, I started watching a lot of scary movies, but I steered clear of The Ring for the longest time because of that. Ended up watching it when I was around 17 and being super surprised that I didn't find it scary at all. Story 93. The Town That Dreaded Sundown. That movie scared the absolute shoot out of me. I watched it a few years ago and it's really honestly stupid AF. Story 94. Not some much Traumatized, but darn, it kinda messed with my head for a bit. Fantastic Planet. I was 7 years old, and because it's animated, my mom thought it would be okay for a kid. It was a bit much for a 7-yo. And I still remember walking out of the theater thinking, what did I just watch? Story 95. The Thing and Star Trek II. Both came out on cable around the same time when I was 5-6, and Mom forced me to watch The Thing as a punishment. Long story, too long to go into here, and I was terrified for years. Trek was a total accidental viewing, but I knew Trek, so I was interested. Then the eel scene, and we had earwigs in our backyard garden. Yeah, put that together. Edit. But of course, now they're both in my regular viewing rotations, both certified classics. Story 96. I caught a few minutes of the 1989 flick called Puppet Master when I was a little kid, and that stuck with me for a while. Story 97. Starship Troopers. The brainsucker bug gave me nightmares for years. Also, RoboCop at the end when the guy got doused in toxic waste, half melted, and then exploded all over a car. That shoot still haunts me. Story 98. Indiana Jones, Temple of Doom. The scene where they rip out the heart was too much for my 9-year-old self. Story 99. Wax House. Spoilers ahead. Definitely not for children, but I was about 8 or 9 and my adults were watching it or had it in on the background. I saw the back of someone's ankle get sliced so they couldn't run away, and now every time I injure the back of my ankle, I'm like, well, this is it. It's wax figurine time for me. I saw someone reach up between the floorboards to the room above and get their fingers cut off. That was terrifying. And then I saw a guy get turned into a wax figurine posed into a piano player, and I thought that was just horrible. But then I saw people from the same group laughing when they saw him because, hey, this wax figure looks like our friend. Where is he anyway? He'd get a kick out of this. And then he starts murmuring from where he sits as a wax figurine with no more skin, only wax, but still somehow alive. Om gom gom go MG. They try to save him and get the wax off him, but I bet you can imagine how that goes. This is all from my memory from over 2 decades ago because I still can't bring myself to watch it again. So please forgive any inaccuracies, anything out of order, or anything I might have confused with another movie. Story 100. Darkness Falls and awkwardly enough Slappy from Goosebumps. Both gave me nightmares terrors for years. Story 101. There were several. When I was a small child, 3, 4, 5, my dad would take me to the movies to watch whatever he was interested in. I saw Bruce Lee on The Chinese Connection, 2001, but the one that the L traumatized me was Fantastic Planet, a cartoon that dealt with humans being playthings for an alien race, and all the violence was a lot to take at 6. I didn't understand, not did most adults, that animation could express very serious subjects. Bakshi's Wizards fudged me up as well, but the one that messed with my mind the most was Tommy the Rock Opera. I saw that when my mom put me in a theater while cleaned out my recently passed grandmother. This was 1975, the same year I came back from living in the foster homes where I was physically, psychologically, and emotionally abused. When I was dropped off for the last time at my mother's by my foster mother, she told me if I ever told my mom about the abuse, that she would eliminate my mom. I ran out of the theater snapping my fingers and waving my hand in front of my face. My thought was, am I supposed to repress all the abuse? Story 102. The sixth sense snuck down after being sent to bed and caught the scene where the back of that kid's head is gone. Had nightmares for months over that one. Story 103. Howard the Duck. I was terrified at the movies and wanted to go home. My mom claimed it's a movie for kids and said, "Look, all other kids are laughing." I was 3. Story 104. The 1999 House on Haunted Hill remake has given me a phobia of medical horror. Also, Event Horizon put me off space-related stories. I was 9 and 7 respectively when I saw them, and it's still hard for me to watch them. But I have gotten over the fear of space. Story 105. I wouldn't say trauma, but kind of freaked me out. Whatever happened to Baby Jane, Hush, Hush Sweet Charlotte, Lady in a Cage, and The Night of the Hunter? Early 1970s, parents let me watch way too much TV. Story 106. Wizard of Oz. The only time I jumped onto my mother's lap for safety and comfort and she laughed. Those darn monkeys. Story 107. What Dreams May Come. I saw it when I was like 78. Heaven was so beautifully shown that I was left depressed how boring mundane life on Earth was for like a week or two. Then, one day, I finally snapped out of it and went on with my life. Story 108. I wouldn't say traumatized, but for some reason I was terrified of Howard the Duck when I saw that movie. Story 109. The Exorcist. Burnt Offerings. My mom would put dark glasses on and smile at me. The Omen. Funny thing is, I love scary movies. Story 110. The Children Under the Stairs. My aunt fell asleep while I was having a summer sleepover at her house, so I decided to grab a movie to throw in the VHS player. I haven't watched it again and probably won't ever consider it. Story 111. That scene in Jurassic Park where the Velociraptors started opening doors had me shook for a solid month. Story 112. Never-Ending Story. Trolls 2. Unico. Island of Magic. Killer Clowns. My parents let me watch too much TV on my own. Story 113. Wizard of Oz. I was around 8-10. I was scared, and I ran upstairs and ran to my mom and said something like the Wicked Witch is melting. Story 114. Old Yeller. My dad walked in and was shocked to find me watching it and asked if I knew how it ended. I had no idea, so he told me. I didn't believe him at first. He was trying to help by warning me and to check if was sure I wanted to continue watching it. Now that I am older, I wonder if this was a movie that traumatized my dad as a child too. Story 115. Dumbo being ripped away from his mom and Jumanji being chased by animals and being trapped in a game for years. Story 116. Pretty much half the movies that we grew up with in the 80s that were meant for children. Labyrinth, Secret of Neem, The Dark Crystal, Never-Ending Story, Watership Down, The Last Unicorn. Story 117. I don't know if anyone will see this, but I'll put mine down anyways. Anyone see the movie Summer School, 1987? The part where they go to a petting zoo and the two guys that are into movie makeup make it seem like they were attacked by bunnies, covered in blood and rabbits attached to their face. Traumatized to this day, I still give bunnies a wide berth. Don't trust those suckered, man. Bite your face off. Story 118. A lot of people have that one movie that scarred them way too young. For me, one that comes up a lot is Coraline. It's technically a kid's movie, but those button eyes, the other mother's transformation, and the whole eerie vibe? Nightmare fuel if you saw it as a child? Another common one, Watership Down. It looks like a cute cartoon about bunnies, and then bam, graphic violence, existential dread, and rabbit-on-rabbit carnage. Story 119. I haven't seen any entries for Child's Play Gremlins. 1, 2 was hilarious and not scary. Critters. These movies terrified me as a kid in the 80s. Story 120. The Blob, 1958. My mom was watching it one Saturday afternoon on TV. I peed myself. I was 4, maybe 5 at the time. Story 121. The Sandlot, saw it when I was very young. The Beast scared the crap out of me and gave me nightmares. Story 122. I was 7. My sister thought it would be funny to put on Hellraiser while